Hello, beautiful community. Let's do a quick analysis of the latest round of Ukraine's assassination campaign on Russian soil, which is part of a bigger war that Ukraine's fighting on Russian soil, about which we've talked quite a bit. Now, this guy, Mr. Kirillov, General Kirillov, isn't just the highest ranked military figure Ukraine have assassinated during the war. He's also quite significant as an interferer in the informational environment. This is a guy who was behind many of the stories about weaponized mosquitoes, biolabs, dirty bombs. So the sort of stuff that some Western political figures like Tulsi Gabbard have ended up regurgitating. Now, the Ukraine's SBU have said that this guy is responsible for Russia's use on over 4,800 occasions of chemical munitions, resulting in over 2,000 Ukrainian soldiers being admitted to medical institutions with various degrees of chemical poisoning. Now, the guy, contrary to some of the misinformation online, didn't have much to do with Russia's nuclear weapons, except perhaps in the sense of decontamination, radiological protection issues. And what we're really interested in, of course, in our chat is a kind of a political analysis of this. So let's try a hand at this. Now, before we do that, quick thought. Don't over-ethicize. We've discussed this at length before, so I'll be brief. Don't over-ethicize Ukraine's war on Russian soil. That's to say, a lot of what Ukraine does is driven by values beyond ethics, like national survival, the perpetuation of one's state. And therefore, I don't recommend in each case asking whether something is just or not just that Ukraine does. Some of the things will be easily covered by international law, as arguably this case will be, because the man remains a combatant, even if he's walking down his own street. Other cases are less clear. And so I don't recommend you over-ethicize this, because it'll be an ethical misunderstanding of war. And I say that because I know there's a big cohort of people online who try to ethically justify everything Ukraine does every time. And that's an unwise enterprise, right? Because you're just simply misunderstanding the nature, including the ethical nature of war. Well, let's do political analysis now. So something very minor, let's call this motivation number one, what Ukraine is doing, is that this just simply hampers the military into a bit of extra bureaucracy. You have to put somebody else in a position, and just slows down the Russian military bureaucracy infinitesimally. Not important, but worth mentioning. Number two, there is clearly a mobilizing motivation here around public sentiment in Ukraine. So not just at the level of fulfillment of sentiments of revenge, but also at the level of generating confidence around Ukraine's capacity to be effective, to inflict damage, and so on. In all of these ways, it's not to be underestimated, this factor of mobilizing the Ukrainian public, especially at a time like this, where Ukraine's in a very difficult position. Number three, you are physically intimidating these people in a way that Russia's military, Russia's defense people, in a way that the sanctions can't do, and potentially demoralizing them. Now, do I think that works in practice? It has some advantages and some disadvantages. But either way, it's not going to affect decisions that Putin makes. Putin doesn't care about this sort of stuff. And I suppose if that's the third motivation, the fourth related but significant motivation is politicization. Ukraine is trying to throw a little coin into any kind of chink it finds in Russia, any kind of chink of a possible conflict. So this just says, well, we'll do this, and maybe not. Fingers crossed, it'll have some kind of effect of the military being, infinitesimally closer to asking questions like, are we fighting for the country or just for the regime? And is the regime not itself potentially in some kind of unconstructive relationship with us, such that it's attacking us too, not just Ukraine, if you look at the extraordinary damage the Russian military has incurred. So that's a little bit of politicization. Now, I don't think that the majority of Ukraine's interventions on Russian soil are particularly thought through from this point of view. They're just attempts to sort of shake a little sofa somewhere and see what kind of creaky crawlies come out of the corners. Hope, as unlikely as it is, that when you shake the sofa a little bit, it cracks and falls apart. And it probably won't, but you might as well shake it again. So that idea of just, you've got to keep shaking that thing and then you see what happens is really the central politicizing motivation of Ukraine's assassination campaign on Russian soil and other expressions of Ukraine's war on Russian soil. Thank you so much for being with me. Lots of love.